Today's episode of the Fine Home Building Podcast is brought to you by Benjamin Obdyke. Benjamin Obdyke would like to use the special occasion of their 150th anniversary to thank the nuisances that builders and homeowners despise. Their premium products protect from those pesky things like rain, snow, humidity, and the neighbor's sprinkler system. Take HydroGap, a drainable house wrap that eliminates moisture from your wall assembly, or Cedar Breather, an underlayment for wood roofing that allows continuous airflow behind shingles or shakes. One man's headache is another man's successful business. To build better with Benjamin Obdyke, visit benjaminobdyke.com.
That happened to me with my hockey skates. That's when I stopped playing.
We can't sharpen these anymore. Your career's over. Oh, man. That's funny.
Otherwise, I'd be in the NHL now.
Welcome to the Fine Home Building Podcast, our weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. I'm Justin Fink. I'll be your host. Today, I am joined by Brian Pontalillo.
Hey, Justin.
There it is. And Rob Yegan.
Hey.
We had one good one. We had episode 100. We had it down pretty good. Rob, you were good today. Brian, a little slow.
Right on there.
A little slow.
Right on the mic.
We'll get it down.
All right.
How do you get in touch with us? FHBpodcast@taunton.com is how you send us questions and topics and complaints and concerns and compliments. That is FHBpodcast@taunton.com. You can also check out our show notes page and see links to all of the cool things that we talk about here at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. I believe Mike still has the link up for our Reader's Choice gallery. That'll still be going on, right, Brian? Reader's Choice.
I think so. It's going to be closed by the... Yeah, it's going to be... We're closing in on the end of it, but
yeah,
voting is still open.
Man, have you been checking that out, by the way? For people who don't know, it's we mentioned this before, but it's this is our annual design awards, our houses issue. And what we do is for the, we have 6 standard awards that we give away for these houses annually. And then we have, I guess it's the 7th one, right? It's, or is it the 6th one?
It's the 7th one.
It's the 7th one.
Yeah.
Reader's Choice, where we take a bunch of houses, put them up online, and let you guys all peruse the details and the photos and tell us which one we should publish. And so the voting is happening, and you can cast your votes. You can vote repeatedly. Once every 24 hours, you're allowed to vote. And it's pretty cool. I'm just opening up the page right now because I want to see who's winning. Can we see who's winning, Brian?
I think you can, yeah.
Yeah, let's find out. Because I definitely was flipping through these yesterday going, which one of these I wanted to...
And you're pretty critical of design, so is there one that you're loving?
Well, I'm just looking at the opening images right now. And I guess you can't even... Oh, it doesn't even... Does it list them in order, Brian? How did we do this?
Well,
whatever it is, it's Brian's fault.
I'm getting to it right now.
Whatever it is, Brian didn't do it right.
You can vote on this on the main page. You can vote. You can also click on the houses to find more information about them.
Yeah.
There's a little about this house tab, and then let's see. Where do you see the results? You might not see.
It might not be posted yet. I thought they.
Oh no! See down in the left corner. See vote standings.
Yeah. Go to that.
Yes. Look who's winning. Here we are.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The home on the waterway.
Yes, that's one of my favorites.
It's a nice one.
Wow, it's a runaway too. 23% right now.
A runaway.
People got to get on there. FineHomebuilding.com/house awards. Go to that. Check it out. You guys are going to love these different projects. They're really cool. Yeah, that one's nice. Anyway, sorry. For everybody listening in the car, they're like, all right, let's get on with it.
In fact, we had a Reader's Choice house. This is many years ago now. It was that Sarah Suzanka house that Sarah
the one in
Suzanka
North Carolina,
and Tina Govan.
Oh yeah, they teamed up.
Collaboration.
Yep.
It was we published. It was a winner, and we published 2 pages on it, and we got so much reader feedback about that house that we then published 6 pages a few issues later on that house.
How much is so much feedback?
Like people just kept saying, "We want to see more of this house. Tell us about this house."
Like 2 emails.
4
They shut down.
letters, five letters.
Shut down our email.
That's a lot by our standards.
Somebody got in touch.
Especially now these days that email's old news. People don't use it anymore. It's like we don't get email anymore.
Yeah, we mostly just care when people are pissed off.
Yeah. And we have to go to our social media sites to find them.
Oh, God, Facebook. Hey, somebody on Facebook the other day let us know that our podcast sucks.
Very clearly.
That's
Yeah.
Facebook. That's
Yeah.
Facebook for you.
Articulate.
Yeah, nobody wants to hear us talk about nobody wants to hear us talk about our projects, and you know,
Nobody.
this is an embarrassment to the brand, and we should be changing our format. So
I'm sorry for you Facebook users, but I don't understand that platform.
Well, I thought we should respond by talking about our projects.
Oh, we can talk about our project.
Let's
do it.
What do you got going on?
Tomorrow, the electrician comes to wire the Sparky comes to replace my panel.
Yes.
And to wire up the second floor. Well, redo some wiring.
Yes. When are we gonna get some updated photos of that place?
Yeah, I should.
I want a video walkthrough.
You know,
Can you do that?
I can do that.
Yeah,
I can do a video walkthrough.
Top of the stairs. I want you to navigate.
Yeah.
And do the
I'll do
here's
that.
where the back bedroom's gonna be. Here's one bathroom. Yes.
I'll do.
Can we get that to Jeff in time to put it on the show?
Yeah,
Yeah,
do
do it tomorrow.
I'll do it tomorrow. I did some plumbing last weekend. Well, I did. I worked alongside my cousin, who's a plumber.
So your cousin.
And-
What did you guys do?
What's that?
What did you guys do?
We did.
Rob got lemonade while
I got lemonade.
plumber did the work.
No, he actually walked around and on like certain details, he wrote my name on the work that I did and his name on the work that he did. Just because he was giving me a hard time. I'm
Yeah.
like, dude.
Let me ask you a better question than
Yeah.
what did you do? What did you learn?
You learned that you don't know the difference between a TY and a Y fitting.
I
right?
learned that it was, I'm glad that I hired a plumber. That's what I learned. Because, yeah, I may have been able to cobble through it, but, you know, when Justin's done an article on this, on drain waste vent systems, and when you start to, like, the amount of code that you have to know and, like, what fittings go where, and you might think a fitting will be fine in a certain location, but in reality, it's not the right fitting, like, a Y and a TY, and just be, oh, yeah, no big deal.
Right.
This will work.
Yeah.
So all those little, like, nuances. My joints look good. My joints look all right, though.
It's interesting
You know?
if you're rooted in carpentry. I think there's that, like, going to like things like plumbing and electrical or mechanicals, like, because in carpentry, yeah, sometimes there's workarounds.
Yeah.
There's
Yes.
Like, you're like, yeah, this will work.
Yes, yes,
You know, maybe this
yes.
isn't the way you do it or the best, but this is going to work. And once I
Right.
paint it, it's going to be all
Yep.
right. But not in plumbing and electrical.
That's
No,
a
or
really good point.
mechanicals.
Yeah,
That's what I came away feeling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's not like, oh, interesting. You wired the three-way switch that way. I usually do it this way. It's like, no, everybody does it the same way.
Yeah.
He uses the ProPress fittings with
Oh, nice.
the Vega tool or that style, and that's sweet. I mean, I was talking to him about that, like just like his experience, like all right, like when you switched, you know, from soldering this one, he's like, dude, it's not even like worth talking about anymore. He's like, we would have been, so we knocked out the bathroom, like the supply lines, and got the tub set and all that kind of stuff in a day. I mean, in hours. You know, it's just so much faster.
Wow.
You know.
And so does the cost become a wash because it's speeding him up?
Sure,
Because it's
yeah.
more expensive, but it's speeding him up to a point where labor's not as
Yeah,
expensive.
there's that. Plus, I think PEX is, I don't know, what's the price point between PEX and copper?
Way cheaper.
Yeah, so there's that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so we got the tub set and all of that.
Pretty much no reason to
pressure
go to copper.
tested.
Oh yeah,
Pressure
we
tested
talked
the
about this on the show, but what did you end up with for a tub? Because we talked when you were trying to make a decision.
acrylic. Like I didn't go with a cast iron
Yeah.
tub. I went with like an acrylic tub, and so that was set in Structilite.
Oh, so you did do a little
Did a little
stabilizing base.
Yeah.
So the worry is that part of the instructions for that tub, or was just a kind of best practice in your eyes or the plumber's eyes?
Well, it's like best practice that I've heard of.
Right.
I don't think it actually spec'd it in the instructions.
So some of them do, and that's to keep the bottom of that tub from flexing
Yeah.
Yeah.
and from feeling or even sounding kind of hollow. And those, so you
Yeah.
just pour a little of, which I guess, I mean, that's essentially
150
plaster mix.
Yeah, it's like a plaster mix.
Yeah.
It took 150-pound bag.
Yeah.
And you just make this big kind of
Pour the cake batter on the floor.
almost. You know what I mean? And then and then set the tub, and you'll have like that nailing. You know, you'll rest it on a 2x flange, but yeah, you.
But do you put it down dry, or do you actually?
No, you mix it.
actually mix it. Okay.
Yeah, it's like a.
So it's gonna hard. It's gonna
what
actually
do you call
harden.
it? Cake batter.
Cake batter. Yeah.
So
I'm laughing
it's
at
gonna
loaf.
harden under there.
And then it hardens under there. Yeah.
So can I ask you a question? Because this is going to have a tiled tub surround, right?
Correct.
Have you gotten to the point yet where you've thought about how will that tile underlayment integrate with the flange of the tub?
Yeah, whether or not I'm gonna fur out,
Yep.
and so it goes over,
Well,
or
some people just butt it to the top. Some people fur out the studs. I've seen people notch the studs back for the tub so they can slide the tub so that the flange ends up flush.
That would have been nice.
So where you
I would have done that if I had thought about it.
So what are you
the
gonna do?
flange?
I haven't. I'm considering furring the studs. But go ahead, Brian.
They notch the studs back far enough so that the flange and the face of the backer board are flush. So half an inch.
No. So
No.
the backside of the backer board,
Just go
Okay, so it can
seamlessly
come
over the
down on
flange.
top.
Yeah.
they're recessing
Okay.
the flange of the tub essentially.
Gotcha.
Which I think is kind of cool. It's a
Oh,
little
they're
bit
recessing
fussy.
the flange of the tub, right?
I mean, I wonder if you could take a whole bunch of paint storing sticks, just grab a handful when the paint guy's not
can.
looking, and just
That'd probably be
You can.
perfect.
tack them right up.
That's how I've seen drywall. I've
Really?
taken
Brian's
off
like,
drywall. or,
look at that look.
Yeah,
Brian's
well,
serious
he's
right now.
psyched.
He is so serious.
I don't know if that is if there's any reason why it wouldn't be acceptable for tile backer board. I've seen that done for drywall, where the drywall comes up to the flange above a shower surround, where they just use. They weren't paint sticks, but they were just small strips of wood and just.
And then the other
Yeah.
question: are you going to caulk the last row of tile where it meets the tub?
No, he's not.
You don't caulk that?
Don't cock that.
I'm gonna cock it.
Why do you not caulk it?
You mean where the tile hits the tub?
Yeah.
In my
Or
experience,
it doesn't hit the tub, but yeah, that joint.
It bridges to
in my experience, caulk in showers is a nightmare.
Yeah, but do
It
you
doesn't. It doesn't hold up. It gets dirty. Even the kitchen and bath caulks will have mildew on them in no time. It's nice now that the acrylic units, the acrylic shower surrounds, are a lot of them anyway. I don't know if all of them, but a lot of them are made in a way where you don't need to actually caulk the seams where they come together. They
right.
lap in ways
But
where
we're
you don't
talking
have
about-
to. Yeah, I'd still would avoid it.
So
if
you don't
can.
caulk. Justin, sounds like you caulk.
Water's not getting up and over that.
I'm not worried about that.
flange.
I'm worried about cleanliness. It's hard to clean back
Yeah,
there.
get in there.
Like if you think mold's going to grow on caulk, then mold's going to definitely grow in that joint. And I think a
Sure
tidy
is.
job demands that you put some caulk there.
It's gonna look better.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna look complete.
Here's the key
For-
though.
for a
You
week.
gotta make sure the tub is full of water when you do it.
Well, I was thinking about that.
Hit me, Rob.
But if you got that struck the light kind of bed under there,
Yeah.
is the tub? Well, I get. So what you're saying is that the tub is going to flex and move, and you
Yes.
want to do that before you caulk.
Yes.
I'm just wondering
Well,
how
when
much
it's full, it's going to
how much that tub is
deflect
going to
downward.
deflect, move.
Well, what's the? Yeah, and what's
It's
the?
just fully supported now with a big old.
What's the dimension of that joint? Are we talking about 1/8 of an inch?
Well, I think you should probably match whatever your grout joint is.
Oh,
You know?
it's more than 1/8 of an inch. Well, depending on what kind of tile you're using.
Well, yeah, I mean, it could be 1/8.
Caulkable in your opinion, or what do you getting at?
Well, I'm just wondering if it's much more. If it was 1/8 or less, I wouldn't be so concerned about that flex because the right caulk will just
Oh, right, I
will
see what
move
you're
with
saying.
that nicely. If it's any bigger than that, then I'd be really concerned about that flex. The bigger
Real
the caulk
concerned.
joint,
Yeah, really concerned.
yeah.
I don't know, Brian. I don't know about you sometimes.
What kind of caulk would you use?
What kind of caulk would
Like,
I
do you have a
use?
favorite caulk for that kind of situation?
No, I would just get a kitchen and bath caulk. I don't have enough of an
Siliconized
opinion.
acrylic caulk.
I would walk down the
Or
aisle and
silicone.
go, what do we think?
You get some, yeah.
I don't have a strong opinion about that as I have about construction adhesive.
Mm.
People, by the way, have sent in responses to my talk about PL construction adhesive and how great it is and how they use it for all sorts of things too.
You know what's a pretty badass caulk is the Lexel.
Yeah.
I've used that. I used their clear to caulk some things outside, and I was just looking. I was right near it the other day. And I was just looking at it. It's like, it's like 5 years old now. Its stuff is just holding tight. Like, not.
yeah.
I found this.
Nothing wrong
I
with
used this when I remodeled the bathroom in my condo like years ago. I used this certain caulk that was dynamite, and I can't remember what it was.
I've heard
and
great-
it drives me crazy.
I've heard great things about the Sherwin-Williams caulks.
Okay.
Yes.
Like it just glides right off your finger. It's really nice
Really?
to work
Yeah.
with. For other plumbing situations, I've used PhenoSeal, which is an adhesive
yeah,
caulk. That
yeah.
can be tough.
to work.
Yeah, because it's
It's like an adhesive.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
it's going to pull back on you a little bit as you're tooling it. Caulk, man, that's a freaking art form.
Yeah.
I've changed my method so many different ways over the years. Like now I'm at the point where I always wear a glove when I'm doing it because I like and I like to be able to smear that finger and then wipe off the gloved finger and then go back and be able to smear more without having to, like, when I would do it with my other fingers, I used to have to like run through fingers. Like, okay, I got my pinky left. Now I'm going my other hand.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Do you use since we published that article,
The tape?
no, not the tape, but do you use backer rod at all ever
I have backer rod. Yeah, I've used
to
it.
ensure that you're not getting?
I don't use it on every joint,
Okay.
but I do use it when the joint seems like it's going to be bigger than usual. Or I remember doing a remodeling project one time, a basement remodel, and hired Brian on to do the beadboard, and ended up with a pretty healthy gap in a corner.
How big of a gap?
And Brian refused to caulk it. That was a long time ago.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Hey, here's a caulking tip. And I wouldn't do this in all cases, but when you're caulking, like for painting, like you're caulking baseboard to the wall or casing to the wall before you're going to paint, wet your joint first. Not wet it, like soak it.
Spritz it?
No, just take a wet rag, moist rag, and run it down. Run it along the joint first before you caulk it, and the caulk will tool much better.
But will it stick to the surface
Yes.
then?
That's
kind
why,
of caulk we're
and
talking?
Sure, you're diminished. Just
Like
like
You're talking about like a kitchen
painter's-
bath
pa-
situation?
or painter's
no, in this
caulk?
case, you're just using a painter's caulk, whatever you use for painting. Like I said, I wouldn't do this necessarily because we do know that could interfere with adhesion. I wouldn't do this on like a critical joint, like an exterior joint or a joint in, what we're talking about with the bathtub. But when you're just trying to like hide the little gap because you're going to paint your base, you're going to be painting baseboard at the wall or trim at the wall, it works great. Yeah.
Little pro tip by Brian.
Yeah.
Not bad. What are you
Not
doing
bad.
What are you doing for backer board in there? Just gonna go cement board?
In
Old
terms
school?
of like hardy or like old school, like
Yeah, like fiber cement, just cement backer board. You're gonna go foam. Like you're gonna
not
go
gonna do foam. I'm not
you're
gonna
gonna
do
do
the
drywall
Schluter. I'm
with
not
a
doing
with a
the-
roll-on coating.
no, I was gonna probably just do like a fiber cement, a hardy
cement.
board.
I think I'm a cement board guy.
You're a real cement board kind
I
of
like
guy.
the cement board. It's easy to work with. It's the same thickness as drywall. I mean, you can get half-inch hardy board too, but I don't know. It's nice. What can I tell you?
Okay.
Let's do some questions.
Let's do it.
Okay, first one's about a track saw. BJ writes, "Hey guys, my apologies if this question has nothing to do with roof venting, insulation, or wind-driven moisture. I just purchased a Makita track saw kit that came with a saw and guide rail. The saw is great, but I'm on my third guide rail trying to find one that will sit flat across its width. Mine is about 1/16 inch higher on the blade side of the rail, making it a little difficult to balance the saw during a cut. I've been told by 2 Makita employees that all of their guide rails are like this, and it will be fine if I use clamps. Basically, suck it up. One of the reasons I bought one of these is to avoid clamp setup when breaking down plywood and MDF for cabinets and built-ins. I've heard of people removing the splinter guard and adding a strip of Formica as a shim. Also, I could just get another brand. Thoughts on the issues? On this issue? Thanks in advance." I mean,
That's frustrating.
yeah.
That is super
Makita,
frustrating.
They're saying all of their tracks are problems. Yeah. Buy
You
a
don't want to
different
be
track.
clamping that track down every time you have to make a cut.
Well, it depends.
I know it depends, but
I wrote back to BJ on this because, we get these questions and sometimes we can't answer them on the show for a little while, and I didn't want to leave them hanging in the breeze. So I just said, I don't know enough about all of the different track saws to know, yeah, that's a real problem with the Makita. I've never used the Makita track saw track. Well, I mean, I guess I have, but I haven't used it for a lot. Not enough to notice that problem.
you have the Festool.
But I have the Festool, and I've used that a lot. And I said, just go buy the Festool track if this is that much of a problem, because you can just use the Makita saw on the Festool track.
There's that as a solution.
Yeah.
Are they all like that?
I
the most
believe
part?
there's at least a decent amount of cross compatibility. And I think that's probably smart on the manufacturer's
Yeah.
perspective, because maybe it's more likely you look at the Festool track and go, why am I going to spend that much money on that track? I'll just get a DeWalt or a Makita track.
Right.
But maybe this is the
Well, because
reason.
the track works.
But I mean,
What does
but not that the Festool's perfect either. It's I had trouble with that little splinter strip that runs along the cutting edge.
Yeah.
It comes wide and then you make your first cut, and it kind of it references your zero clearance. Then mine, I have my track in the back of my truck, and I found that after it heated up, the strip just fell off. And then I re-adhered it, fell off again.
Really?
I bought a new one, stuck that one on, that one fell off. So I said, all right, let me try a different brand. So I bought a DeWalt replacement strip and put it on the Festool track, and it's been fine. So for what it's worth, I also have DeWalt clamps for my Festool track, and they work fine.
What does the Makita track cost? Do you know?
I don't know. But
Interesting.
But so to your comment with the clamps, I have mixed feelings about this because I started out never using clamps. I'm like, because the underside of these tracks have that kind of non-skid surface, the little grippy surface, and you've used the saw a bunch of times too, so you know. But most of the time, you can align it to your mark, and then it'll just sit there, and you're fine. Sometimes I work with pre-finished plywood, and it will not stay there for that. It will slip around. Or for delicate cuts, or not delicate cuts, but really critical cuts, like where, if it's a really expensive sheet of plywood, and why would you not just put 2 clamps on it to be sure it doesn't move? Because I've been in situations where you're in the middle of the cut, and the vacuum hose and power cord will wrap around the track and pull it out of alignment.
Yeah. I've beaten up the power cord on the saw a little bit just because, it hits that end, you know what I mean, and just rakes over it.
Yeah.
Yep.
But anyway, that's kind of my take on that. We're working on an article right now, kind of track saw tips. Basically, we're going to walk through a sequence of the right way to break down a sheet of plywood with a track saw, as well as some tips for success and the best setups and the best kind of the workflow through the whole process. And we'll have some video associated with that. So stay tuned for a little bit. We'll get that out for you.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Because I've got a track saw, and I definitely need a new blade on it.
Yes.
Should I sharpen that blade, or should I buy a new blade?
Which one do you have?
You got a Festool blade on there?
Festool, yeah, it's a Festool blade. I know they're pricey.
I think they should have enough carbide on there to be able to sharpen it.
So you had didn't you just get a couple blades sharpened?
Yes.
What is that? So what's the process?
I sent some table saw blades to Ridge Carbide in New Jersey. And basically you pay by the tooth. So I sent in a 40 tooth blade and a 50 tooth blade, and their prices, you fill out a little sheet, put your credit card info on it, wrap up the blade, send it to them, and they send them back, and they're sharpened, and they are so sharp.
Really?
Yes.
And it's relatively inexpensive.
Yeah, I can't remember. I think I paid, I don't know, $40 or $30 or something to get them both sharpened. I can't remember exactly.
All right.
But it was affordable, and you paid a small shipping fee.
Sure.
And so that made sense for me because I'm using blades that are $100 and more.
Yeah.
So if I can get at least a handful of sharpenings out of them, that makes sense to me. Especially the more blades you send in at once, the better the deal is. But some blades that you buy are not, they don't have enough carbide to be able to be resharpened.
Gotcha.
And I have not been in this situation, but I certainly don't feel like I can look at a blade and go, yeah, I got enough room. Like
so you just send them in.
I can look at a hardwood floor and say, yeah, I can still sand this and refinish it. I can't look at a saw blade and say, I got enough carbide here.
I got you.
This is good to be resharpened. So I imagine at some point I'm going to send it in, and they're going to call me and say, you can't sharpen this anymore.
Ridge Carbide, did you say?
Ridge Carbide, yeah.
That happened to me with my hockey skates. That's when I stopped playing.
we can't sharpen these anymore. Your career's over. Oh, man. That's funny.
Otherwise, I'd be in the NHL now.
Oh God. I lost my train of thought.
Yeah.
But I would imagine that a Festool blade has enough carbide,
sure,
in my uneducated opinion, to to be able to send it. But they have a lot of teeth, so you might end up paying a decent chunk of change. I think I bought a Freud replacement blade.
Oh, really?
So here's the thing: how long can you go without your track saw? If you're a guy who uses a track saw a lot, can you wait a couple of weeks to get your blade out and back? Or do you just need to buy a new one? So that I work under the idea that I like to have a few blades so that I can always have some out for sharpening or down because they're dull and I haven't gotten around to sending them in and I'm still not screwed. The Freud blade's been fine for me. Festool will not. They don't recommend, right in their instructions, in their manual, they'll say, their saw has been set up and with the assumption that you're using a Festool blade, so they can't.
Makes sense.
Can't really condone the use of any other competitor's blades, but I think at this point you'll find that there's a lot of options. And Freud is a pretty popular choice for low cost, high quality blades. In fact, Fine Woodworking just did, I think this is in their current issue, they just did combination blades for a table saw, and Freud did very well. I mean, you know how their articles are. There's 17 best overalls and 3 best values, but but the Freud was one of them, and people really, really like those Freud blades for their
Price
budget. Price point for quality. They're really nice. Actually, now that I think, I don't know if I have a Freud. I might have an Oshlin. I've had a couple different replacement blades. Anyway, taken to task on bat insulation. Rob writes, you guys talk a lot about insulation, and I've heard you mention several times before that bat insulation can be installed correctly, but it sounds almost like a cover your ass kind of comment made just for the record. Do you all really think bat insulation is an okay choice? If so, how do you define installed correctly? So,
number one, Rob should know that we don't make cover our ass statements.
Well, sometimes we do.
We are reckless on the show.
We do lean towards the reckless as opposed to the careful.
But it's true. Often we do say, we find ourselves down a rabbit hole of steering people in a direction, then go, well, it's not that it's impossible to make an air barrier with poly, but you probably shouldn't, that kind of stuff. So would you really use bat insulation, I guess, is the,
Yes.
aside from best practice, would you do it?
Yes.
And I would too. I'd have no problem using bat insulation installed correctly.
So we'll get at that.
Well, and there's different types of bat nowadays. I mean, it was that fiberglass was, when people mentioned bat insulation, talk about fiberglass.
You mean like mineral wool?
Now you can get mineral wool bats. I think there's, even though we don't see it much, I think there's even a company that makes cellulose bats.
Yeah.
Recycled denim.
Recycled denim. So there's other types of bats now, because we can talk about two sort of factors here. We can talk about how tricky it is to install fiberglass bats, which is completely different than installing a mineral wool bat, for example. Very, very different process.
I think we could focus on fibrous insulation, right?
I think that the criteria for judging a good install is the same, though.
Yeah.
Well, it is, but the likelihood of getting to one is very different when you're cutting something that's rigid and you can cut crisp with a saw versus something that's not easy to cut.
So which one are you talking about? Which one's rigid?
And then the other question is that we can discuss here is if we're talking about fiberglass, do we feel good about fiberglass as an insulator?
All right, let's take these one at a time.
There's a couple of factors in this question.
Did you write this question, Brian?
Yeah, Jesus, you're
taking
up.
it to task, man.
Are you going to yell again today?
All right, hit it.
All right, what about, let's
start somewhere.
I'm just asking questions, guys.
What are the limitations of fibrous insulation?
Limitations?
Limitations. Why would we even have to be questioning whether we recommend it? It's not an air barrier.
Yeah, so airflow, because fibrous insulation is not an air barrier.
Right.
It doesn't restrict airflow.
And why does that matter? Because heat flows on air, and we want to control air if we want to keep things comfortable. So that's why sometimes people criticize that insulation.
Also, in certain assemblies, it might not have a high enough R value per inch to get you what you're after. So you might switch to a dense packed cellulose or spray foam.
Dense pack's gonna be the same.
If we're talking about fiberglass in particular, it's got the lowest R value of all the insulating materials.
They're all right in the same neighborhood, though. Mineral wool, cellulose, and fiberglass are all, you're going to get about 4-ish
3.5
per inch. So that's kind of apples to apples for me in terms of R value.
So all fibrous insulation is roughly the same.
I mean,
from performance-wise, in your mind.
Performance-wise, no.
R value-wise.
R value-wise, yes.
Okay.
Now, Brian was mentioning, should we focus on fiberglass versus mineral wool? Because, I mean, those are the two most common bat insulations you're going to find anywhere. By far, the majority is going to be fiberglass. So you can get faced and unfaced. Unfaced, I mean, the only difference is that one has a vapor retarder, which you want to be in the warm in winter side of the assembly. Does not have to be continuous. Does not have to be taped at over the studs. Blah 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 blah. How do we feel about fiberglass bats? I should also say, mineral wool doesn't have any facing. I don't believe you can even buy it. I've never seen it, never heard of it, even anybody using mineral wool that had a vapor barrier.
I don't believe so.
Out of those two choices, I greatly prefer mineral wool. It is more expensive, from my experience.
Almost twice the cost, I think.
The bats are shorter. So so it's a little bit of a different thing. You can't, like, often with fiberglass, you can buy a long roll of it and then cut it to specific lengths. Mineral wool is limited to, it depends on the manufacturer, but usually around 3.5, 4 feet, somewhere around that neighborhood. So it might mean that you end up with a bunch of little offcuts you have to use stacked together. I just find the consistent semi-rigid shape of mineral wool it makes it really easy to cut it for kind of a friction fit into framing bays.
And
where fiberglass is a little bit, you're supposed to unpackage fiberglass and then let it like puff up and kind of expand.
Loft the bats.
Yeah, you loft them, and then you have to shove them into the bays and kind of, you're supposed to kind of reach back along the edges and
some
tuck
people
them
don't
back.
do that. They'll put the bat in there and they'll push it into the center, and like the back corners of the bat are not making any kind of contact with the sheathing, and so there's like that opportunity for the convective looping going in those big air gaps. So you take a putty knife or something and really kind of push those back corners so it's...
So let's talk about convective loops, though, just so maybe you can explain that so people... It's essentially like a little mini heat rises and then cools and falls.
Yeah, it displaces the cool air, and so
that movement
yeah
can lead to discomfort eventually. I mean,
Sure.
it's gonna move air.
Yeah.
So you want to minimize airflow even within the cavity. So
yeah, I mean, I think so. Like fiberglass bats work well. It's a great insulator in a completely airtight, 6-sided assembly.
Right.
And when it's fully filling that cavity. If you've got gaps, some people cut sometimes they'll cut a bat short, and so there's that gap at the top of the, right beneath the top plate, and it's like obviously that's going to be an issue around electrical boxes. Sometimes it's hard to detail, so it takes some attention to really install it completely.
Yes, it's a great way to put it, Rob, too, because the material itself is great. It's a great insulator. Period. It's almost like the way that we've defaulted to trying to install it is not necessarily the best.
Yeah.
There's a lot of it's really difficult to get a good installation.
We should put we'll put a
have-
couple articles up because there's certain levels of installation. Like when you go in, they get an inspection,
Right.
Whether it's a level 5 or whatever it might be.
It's that how it works piece,
Yeah.
right? For Mike to put up, it's how it works on bad insulation, isn't
Yeah.
it? Or fiberglass.
And then Patrick did that story
Yep.
on the actual process.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
Yeah. I think it was a level 5, whatever the top level is.
Sure.
It was like a level 5 installation for
Yeah.
fiberglass or something.
One thing that's definitely worth mentioning, we probably mentioned it on the show before because we've had the luxury of being on some installs where we've got like video lights and stuff going on. And sometimes you don't realize how many fiberglass particles are floating around in that air when you're
Yeah.
actually working with this stuff. So
Yeah.
a full-on respirator and probably the Tyvek suit might seem like overkill, but it's not.
Yeah, and not that mineral wool's any better.
Right,
Those,
I mean, yeah,
those
it's all that kind of
particles
stuff.
are gnarly
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, you just don't realize how much that stuff is in the air when you're working with it.
I mean, the same goes for rigid foam. I mean, I think at this point, it's like if you're installing any sort of insulation, and you're not
all
protecting
nasty
yourself.
stuff.
It's it's not
except
good.
for maybe the blue jeans.
Not-
Oh,
So,
man.
So we've seen a lot of people nowadays preferring not to use bats, but instead to use fill insulation.
Yes.
So whether it could still be fiberglass, it's mostly cellulose, but that's where we've seen a lot of people going. And I've been as we're seeing more and more building assemblies in different ways, and I was involved in a discussion recently about structurally insulated panels and ICFs as options. And one of the things that just is becoming more and more of a question for me is remodeling.
yeah.
When it comes to insulation in wall cavities, I'm just really sort of curious to see how people begin to deal with these loose fill insulations down the road. Are insulating contractors going to come in with a system that
Vacuums it all out?
up?
Yeah.
Is that where
that's
we're
what they
going
do.
to go? Yeah.
Yeah.
And can they reuse it?
No, probably not.
I don't think so.
I don't think they are.
Yeah.
But you can hire an installation contractor, come in, remove this loose fill
giant
cellulose.
vacuum.
Yeah.
Suck it out.
But I'll tell you what, I had to do a little retrofit with, because I had my rim joists and everything spray foamed with closed cell spray foam, and I put a big old X where I didn't want any spray foam because that's where the waste line from upstairs comes down into the basement where I connect it into the main line. Sure enough, They sprayed that bay. And so just trying to clear that out to get access to the existing pipe that was in the wall was a pain.
Really?
And I guess I didn't realize how much foam was actually in there.
How did you do it?
An oscillating multi-tool and just my little pry bar and stuff.
So just cutting it, square,
and like prying it out and breaking it apart. It was,
Yeah.
So I couldn't imagine like, oh, sweet, we have to do something beyond that. I mean,
From an old house perspective, I know that they don't typically allow spray foam because it's not reversible. You know,
In like a historic
that's a
district or something.
priority for them. Yeah.
you mean like in a preservation?
Yeah, well,
kind
not
of
in preservation,
context,
but yeah, like
historic
a
district.
historic context. And you could say what you want about historians being a little strict about some materials, like we wouldn't allow those windows because they don't look right. But for something like this, I'm not sure that they're wrong to question the irreversibility of it.
I mean, I think it's a factor in all building because we do reverse things and we do remodel.
Absolutely.
And, so I think it's an important factor.
It raises peel and stick, though, every time for me.
Peel and
Why
stick,
is that not on the list for irreversible? You know? You're not getting that stuff off.
No, and it's just going to be a
It's going to be a
pain
nightmare.
to work around it. Yeah.
Cover your house in plastic in a peel and stick, and then
There's that
it'll
one.
all rot out and you won't even see it.
So you don't see it everywhere, but sorry to get back to the installation options, but
You should be sorry.
Johns Manville Spider is really interesting to me, which is a sprayed fiberglass. So you get the benefits. You're going to get the performance that you would get out of a bat. It's not necessarily, it's not an air barrier. It's not like super high R value, but it's a sprayed fiberglass that is like fiberglass fibers mixed with adhesive that you spray within the cavities.
So sort of like damp sprayed cellulose.
Yeah, so you're filling the bay completely, and you're not relying on necessarily the precise installation of the bats,
Yeah,
Well,
it's
that's
the same like
pretty
dense pack
cool.
cellulose or wet spray cellulose.
Yeah, and
Damp spray,
that takes that installation
Yeah.
problems out of their challenges, out of the equation.
Yeah.
Because the fill done right, the fill and the sprayed stuff solves a lot of those.
Yeah.
Solves a lot of the installation issues.
Your best bet with fiberglass or any bat insulation, installing it really, really well is going to be it's going to be biased towards the simplicity of your structure.
Yeah.
Like really easy 2x4 cavities with a with a gable roof with no interruptions and mechanicals to work around.
Yeah.
That's going to be fairly straightforward. You throw in a hip roof or a valley,
An outlet box.
one wire.
Splitting bats over wires and all that kind of stuff that some people do. Sometimes they do. Guess what they say? They say fiberglass bats, it's a great insulator, rather difficult to install perfectly. And in order to get best performance, it needs to be installed perfectly.
Yeah.
Right. Did you see now that Patrick was showing me the other day that fiberglass bat manufacturers are now starting to print the R value on the fiberglass itself? Because like when you install it in some situations, where there's no vapor barrier, which usually has the R value right on the craft paper, or if that's facing the wrong direction, it's now like stamped like in ink or something right on there, so you can see R15.
Really?
I'm guessing for the inspector.
Cool. You want to jump down the rabbit hole of compressing fiberglass bats?
Sure, let's do it. I love rabbit holes.
I don't. Yeah.
So what happens to the R value? Can you compress a fiberglass bat?
My only hesitation with going down this path is that I haven't figured out how to say it yet.
I know. Maybe we could follow up on it.
No, let's try because we already started it. I'm gonna try.
Okay. So, can you increase the performance of a fiberglass bat by compressing it into your wall cavity?
That's a trick question. That was phrased trickily. Can you increase the performance of a bat by pressing a bigger bat than is sized for the cavity into the cavity? No, you do not increase the performance. You decrease the performance of that particular bat, but you do increase the performance of the wall cavity.
Yes, Brian.
Compared to one that fits normally without compression.
Yes. So if you take like an R or whatever, make up the number, an R30 bat, and compress it. Well, we should pull out.
See, now you don't have the numbers. You start.
Stop. Let's stop.
All right, we'll just stop. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Yes.
We'll stop.
It's just confusing enough.
I'll let that
move
one
on to the
hang.
next thing.
That was good, Brian.
Thank you.
good. Brian did it.
Right?
Yeah, not bad.
That was good.
I'm tempted to try and say it again. I don't know why.
I know.
Let's just, okay.
I felt the same need for some reason.
Like I got to say it out loud in my version to see if it makes sense.
That's where I was going down, but you guys shut me down, thankfully.
Because you started using numbers.
I know.
Don't ever do that.
All right. Good job,
All right.
Brian.
Replacing door frame without disturbing trim is question number 3. Jeff writes, I have a bit of a weird one for you guys. I'm being asked by a client to remove an exterior door, frame and all, to swap it for a new unit. The trick is that the interior of the wall is covered with some nicely installed frame and panel wainscot that is connected directly to the flat casing door trim. I'd really rather not touch the wainscot, but I'm stuck trying to think of how to tackle the door removal. Multi-master to cut the nails? Any thoughts on this? So we have a nice interior trim package, but a door and jamb that need to be removed and replaced and tied in without, disturbing the interior trim.
Can it be done?
Can it be done? I've done it.
Yeah, of course it can be done.
Yeah, right?
And I think he's already answered his own question, except, yeah, you got it. Jeff?
How did he get it? What is the...
Clip those nails with a multi-master.
But you got to create a gap in there to get the multi-master in. So theoretically, well, no, you laugh, but this is where it gets critical, I think, is you have... let's assume that wainscot is stain grade so that we have less wiggle room.
Nice.
Ooh.
See,
nice, Justin.
Stain grade.
Doubt it is, but go for it.
Can't get those little pry bar dents in there.
You can't get the dents in there. So I'm thinking, and I don't remember how I did it. I years ago I did this, but I'm pretty sure I just got a pry bar in there and made a little wiggle room enough that
caused me to caulk it.
Enough that you could see the gap between the door jamb and the wainscot. Snip those nails, and then run your reciprocating saw along the jamb with a shortened blade that's gonna max out at the jamb depth, so that you don't ding into the backside of the casing. Because I should just start over. You're gonna remove the exterior casing.
So you're working from the outside in.
I'm gonna remove the exterior casing. I'm going to stick a reciprocating saw blade between the door jamb and the rough opening, and I'm going to run it all along the sides and top to cut the fasteners holding the door into the opening. Now, if they're screws, you can back the screws out. If they're nails, you'll have to cut them.
Okay.
It's easy, it's just the fastest, easiest way to do it. You want that reciprocating saw blade to be a length that will get in there and cut the nails, but not be so long that it's going to run into the backside of the casing and lead to it rattling around and pushing or anything. One way to do it is get a short blade, like a 3.5-inch blade, and make sure you check the stroke of the blade to make sure it's gonna work for you. Another way is to take a pair of like vice grips or something and grab them onto the reciprocating saw blade and just kind of wrench it back and forth, until the metal fatigues and snaps where you want it to be. So you can create a custom length blade essentially.
Okay.
That's harder to do now. The blades have gotten really good. And they used to be that they were kind of easy to break, but now the manufacturers make them really tough.
Buy a cheap blade and break it.
Yeah. Or you can just vary the angle of the tool in order to vary the depth of cut.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for anyone who's doing this work regularly, this is a no-brainer. But for a newbie, and we don't know what Jeff's skill level is here, but for a newbie, not tricky thing, but the thing to remember is that the reciprocating saw extends the blade pretty far. So you might think you have the right length, but it's not extended out of the saw yet, and now all of a sudden you're knocking it into something.
Check the stroke, as Justin mentioned.
Check that stroke.
Yeah.
Check that stroke.
And here's what I would do with the trim.
On the interior.
So what you can do now that the jamb is freed from the rough opening, if it's paint grade, get the thinnest pry bar you have. I would probably actually start with like a small putty knife, and I would tap it into that gap. First, I would take my blade, utility knife. I would cut score the whole thing.
All the
if there's any
caulk and
caulk,
paint.
you want to separate that.
Okay.
Then I would slip a putty knife in there, a stiff putty knife, tap it in, and just kind of wiggle it back and forth to create a little bit of room. Then you can put your pry bar right onto the putty knife so that the putty knife is protecting the trim side, and you're prying, and if any damage happens, it's going to happen to the jamb that you're removing. So that's one way you can do it. Then when you get enough wiggle room between the casing and the jamb, you can come in there and cut them with a multi-master or some sort of snips that you can get in.
Little finish nails, likely.
If it's stain grade, I'm wondering if I wouldn't try to capitalize on that reveal of the jamb. So the trim only overlaps the jamb, let's say halfway. So that leaves you the other half of the jamb protruding into the opening, right? When looked at from the inside. So you could take a block, put it on edge so that it's riding along the casing edge, but touching the jam edge.
Yep.
And use it as a beater bar.
Just to
go-
knock a little
just to
gap in
go
there.
all the way around and just tap, tap, tap until you're starting to push that jam out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then that way you've created enough room
To get in there.
to cut those nails without hopefully disturbing that casing.
So that reveal was one of the biggest questions I had about this. So when you buy an exterior door, you're buying the door size. But and I just was trying to wrap my head around this. Does that necessarily mean that your jam, the distance between the insides of your jam, is going to be the same? So basically, the question is, can he be sure that he's going to be able to put this door in and still have the right reveal?
No.
On the trim there.
So we're not there yet.
Okay.
So are we settled on? We're pretty sure we got some ideas for how to get the door out.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, the big,
Sure.
it's really the big caution, which is find a way to do it where you're not denting the trim that you're trying to keep and protect as you pry.
What do you mean find a way? That's his question. How do I do it without destroying the trim? You're saying find a way to do it.
But specifically that dent. If you didn't care about dent, if it was paint grade, it's actually quite easy because you're going to use a pry bar and you're going to have a caulked joint there anyway. So if it's paint grade, it's a lot less of a concern than if it's.
Let's call it stain grade though, and I'm going to have to push this one more step further. I've now created the gap between the jam and the backside of the trim, and I've cut those nails. Now the door's gone. The door's out.
I just want to be.
I'm not done yet, Rob.
Oh, hold on a second, though.
Okay, what?
You are definitively saying that you're just not going to mess with that interior trim, whether it's stain grade or paint grade. It's not worth kind of dismantling that and taking the. You know what I mean?
If it's
like you're agreeing, like, don't touch the interior trim. Is that what you're saying?
I guess what I'm assuming in the question is that I'm putting myself in the position that I've already pursued that course of action and determined that it's not going to go well.
Okay.
And honestly, I wouldn't have too much trouble doing it this other way.
Okay.
I think it would be the lesser
I
of
just wanna
two
be clear.
evils.
I'd have to see what it looked like
Brian needs more information, everybody.
because
Let's assume it's a lot of layers of trim.
Yeah,
I mean,
super built up, stain grade.
you know,
Right,
You
but
may
the
or may
question-
not be able to get those profiles.
let's call it a Bolex,
You know, if you break
Bolex
anything
molding
or-
over the panel and onto the style.
that all doesn't matter so much as how it ties into this casing. Is there really a chance that it's locked into this casing or not? That'd be my question.
Well, let's say that you can see these nails going through.
Well, yeah, then you know.
It's got to be nailed to the jam.
I don't know.
I mean, most of the time.
if it is or
I
not.
don't know. Didn't we replace a door that wasn't? that wasn't.
We replaced a door that didn't have any fasteners in it.
That's right.
It wasn't even attached to a rough opening.
Yeah, it wasn't even
Yeah.
attached.
I think it was nailed to the trim, but it was pretty typical in old houses to
That's
be
true.
nailed to the trim.
The
but
trim was
not
holding
the rough
it in.
opening. Yeah.
Yeah, I've taken out a lot of windows that are like that.
Yeah. That's back in the day, huh? Like,
Running.
what are you guys nailing windows in? It's attaching the casing to it.
All right, so where are we?
All right, so I got the door out.
Okay.
Now I got these little
Nubs.
finish nails, these little nubs sticking through the backside of the trim. What do you do with those?
Nippers.
Cut them flush, or do you pull them out?
I try to pull them out,
Well, now
but
You try to pull them through?
Yeah, but you might
'Cause they're
actually
finished nails?
damage that trim by doing so, because now like that's unsupported trim and it could be flexing and maybe just
Yeah, that's true.
Cut 'em
If you start
flush.
cranking on that trim
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
now you're
Now
pulling
you're
it
weakening
away
everything
from
else, so
the
yeah.
wall.
I don't know. Those are pretty small nails. I think you could gently with end nippers. That's my
Yes.
preference.
Yeah.
I like them because they have that curved
Yeah, you could
pincher jaw.
roll
You
it
can
out.
Yeah.
grab it and then roll it,
Yep.
and it'll pull. A lot of
Yes.
guys use different kind of pliers for that. If you're really concerned about the surface, you could put vice grips on there, grab the nail, tighten it down so that it's grabbing and locking on the nail, and then just kind of twist and pull the nail out, and you won't even touch the wood.
Why not,
I'm just-
just
but-
clip them off?
I've never had much luck clipping them flush to the
Clean.
surface.
yeah, you're not gonna like
Flush.
super
Yeah.
flush, but maybe
Depends what
probably
kind
not
of
that big
nails
of a
they
deal
are,
though.
too.
But yeah, just sometimes like when you're tweaking that, you're then moving joints and you're moving some other stuff.
Yeah.
depending upon where you are in the trim.
So I would either grab the nail itself separate from the wood and pull the nail through, wiggle it until
Yeah.
I can pull it through.
Okay.
You know, the idea here is not to disturb. We should say, well, why not just tap them through to the face? Because you're trying to not disturb the interior face,
And that
especially if there's
finish.
filler in there and then
Yeah.
there's finish
Yeah,
over it.
right.
Even if it was painted, I wouldn't
Yeah.
go that direction. It's just more work that you have to
Sure.
conceal. Paint can flake off when you tap it through.
Okay.
Okay,
Everything's clean.
everything's clean. So now we're on to the door.
Yeah.
Let's hope that before you got to this phase of the project, you have carefully measured the jam. to see what the reveal is going to be. Because if your new jam is not the same as your old jam, you might be in a weird situation where the reveal is not even at the top and the sides.
So if you're ordering a door, right, can you get those specs?
I think you might be building this door.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Not building the door, but
Project over.
I think you might be installing
a jam.
installing jams.
Take the stain grade wainscot, paint it,
Pull it off the wall,
so
put
you
it
can
back on,
caulk
paint it.
everything.
I mean, the short answer is that it's probably going to be about the same. And it might be
Likely
and it
it
might
would.
even be close enough that it'll be fine.
Because you're buying the
Yes.
dimensions, and there's only going to be, so likely it is.
But the jam thickness can be different from brand to brand. It's exterior, and that opens up a different can of worms with thickness.
As
and
long as it fits the rough opening, thickness matters less than dimensions between, for that reveal, than dimensions between the insides of
well,
the
that's
jam.
what I'm talking about. Well, yes.
It's making sure that dimension is.
It should be okay. But dear God, check before you get to this part of the process, because otherwise you have now a wide open hole in your house, and who knows what lead time to get a door that actually fits. All right, so we've checked that. So now how to install that new door. I mean, fastening to the jam is easy. It's like any other door. You can only shim it from one side. You're only going to be access to shim from the outside. So
Right.
if you have casing attached to the door like brick mold, that's got to come off for installation. Set that aside. So now you have to shim it from the outside.
Yeah.
So would you then switch to taking measurements of the jam thickness and shimming the rough opening, and then putting the door in, the Manny Silva technique?
Correct.
Oh, with the screws?
Like where you plumb.
He uses screws
Yeah.
and adjusts the thickness screws as shims.
Yeah.
He'll plumb those screws.
Right.
But,
Which is awesome.
Gary
That's a great
Striegler has done it a different way with holding a level up and then sliding shims behind it and then just nailing those shims to the jam.
Right.
Or so to the rough opening.
So similar idea, but
Similar
using the
idea, but
shims
using
instead
shims.
Of, yeah.
Or you can put the door frame in, the door jams in, and then slide shims that are not necessarily tapered.
Mm-hmm.
You could use tapered ones too, I guess. You just have to slide them in, and you would be limited by the depth of that rough opening.
Yeah.
So for the problem with tapered shims there is tapered shims work best when they're opposing.
Right.
So you never want to have just one shim with a door balancing on a tapered shim. You want to have two shims that come in equidistant from both sides and create a flat surface. So if you can't come in from both sides because the interior casing is on, then I would want to switch to flat shims that
'cause
match what I need.
I've tried to do that, and I find it infuriating.
like the jam
it's-
rolls a little bit when
so-
you
it just getting
crank on it.
to stay in there.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can't
yeah.
get them kind of tight and to hold for a second before you
Yep.
fasten them. And
Yep, and you can do it. I mean, you can cut the reverse shim, slide it in butt first, and then slide skinny edge first to match it. But it's more hassle than it needs to be. All of this, by the way, should be done with the door off the jams if you want to make your life easy. Hang just the jam. All right. Critical question, though, and this I don't have a good answer for, so I want to discuss it. How does it connect, if at all, to the backside of the interior trim?
So
How
how,
does
so,
it
so how do you refasten that trim to the jam?
If you do.
well, we skipped a major thing here.
Did we?
Yeah.
Don't get
Yeah.
into flashing or
We,
anything.
no,
sill?
we skipped a big thing because how
Listen to me.
you're-
Don't get into flashing or anything.
you're
Air
not-
sealing?
If you're a shimming
Roof ventilation.
Roof ventilation.
if you're putting this door, let's say this was new construction, you're putting a door in. You know, you don't have to get it perfectly centered in the rough opening or
Yeah.
in any particular position. But we skipped the fact that he's got to have this thing perfectly positioned for the right reveals on that trim.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about how to get that at all. That's what's making this different than installing a door.
Well, you'd have to put it in the opening and then center it from the
Yeah.
inside. Look at it from the inside, check your reveals, and then shim it to
And
hold
then,
it there.
and then recheck your reveals. And if you shimmed the reveals
Yeah.
off, you got to start again.
Well, you know what's going to get really wonky is what if that trim is not plumb?
What if that trim's not plumb?
Now what do you obey?
Well,
'Cause
this
it's
is a door,
It's
so
a
you
door,
obey the.
so you obey.
you
right.
obey plumb.
You want the door to operate.
Well, the old one probably operated, but
Yeah, how is that?
fascinating. I mean, fastening.
How is that old doors can be so out of whack and operate, and then you try to put a new door in plumb, and you can't get it to work?
I don't know. Doors are maddening sometimes.
So how would you? So what do we need? Little bead of PL.
I would be tempted to not use any fasteners
Use
through
some
through that
adhesive?
trim.
I guess it depends how nicely you get that installed against it, and if you need to pull the trim to the jam or not.
Yeah.
You know, if you get it really installed really well against it, then you wouldn't need a fastener. The trim's not going anywhere. The question is, like, do you need to pull it to the jam a little bit to hide, you know, close the gap?
What if, and this is going like way to the extreme. Let's say that the trim is like real fancy antique trim and you really can't touch it. You could, so now before that jam goes in, you have the interior casing overhanging the opening, right? So if it's like 3.5-inch flat casing or whatever, you're going to have a good portion of that protruding out to cover that jam. You could glue a block strips to the back side of the casing, and then just put a bead of glue in clamps.
That's what you're saying.
When you slide the jam in, now you can put the clamp wrapped around the jam and the trim to hold that joint tight, and then fasten through the jam into this strip. So you basically created a cleat on the back is one way you could do it. You could use biscuits. Biscuits and clamps. Brian loves biscuits.
Would you have enough meat there to put a biscuit in?
I would think so.
Okay.
I don't know how deep the trim is, but 3/4 inch, you should be fine.
Okay. All right.
It's a good question.
Wow.
Lots to dig into there.
That's some armchair contracting right there.
It's fun. That kind of job gets me up in the morning.
You hear that, Brian?
Yeah. I like it.
Justin's psyched.
All right, that's going to wrap us up.
Yeah, I think that was it.
So, listen, we mentioned a couple different articles there by Striegler and Manny Silva, and we did the fiberglass bat. So hop on to finehomebuilding.com/podcast to check out those articles. We have those and many more, especially on hanging doors. My God, we have a lot of hanging door articles. Mike will put all of them up. Also, send us questions and topics for future shows at fhbpodcast@taunton.com. We've been getting great stuff. Keep it coming. We love to talk about carpentry stuff, too, not just roof venting. So hit us up. So until next time, this is Justin for Brian and Rob saying, keep craft alive and happy building.